to A Picture is Worth 1,000 Words with our guest speaker today, Jaimie Engle. Hi Jaimie, how you doing?
Hi.
Before we get started, we just have a couple of housekeeping things to get out of the way. We wanted to let you know this is part of our Imagine Your Story summer reading series, which is going to go all the way till the end of July. You can see that link there in front of you, hcplc.org/summer. In addition to finding out about the upcoming events that we have, including next week, you can find out about the reading challenges and see if you're up to the task of earning great digital badges with your reading prowess and being eligible to win amazing prizes. All that is on the summer reading website that you can check out right now. This program is brought to you thanks to the Friends of the Library of Tampa-Hillsborough County. So thank you very much to our friends. They make all this programming possible, including a lot of those prizes that you can be eligible for just by reading and logging your reading in Beanstack. So thank you to the friends. And before we get started, we wanted to let you know that if you're watching this live, you can actually interact with our special speaker for today. You can put a question or a comment in the questions section of the GoToWebinar control panel, or wherever that questions section is located on your computer or your mobile device. So please do that, and we will be sure to try and get to those by at the very end of the session and before we wrap up. And also, we wanted to do a little book shout out. You will see in just a little bit, this is directly related to some of the stuff that Jaimie is going to talk about today. And we wanted to shout out Little Red Riding Hood. It is one of tens of thousands of books and other reading material that you can get through the library website for free. Go to hcplc.org/book/ebooks. This one is on Hoopla, which means you can read it not only via your computer, but also via your mobile device, because Hoopla has a mobile app that you can utilize. So, and it's one of many Little Red Riding Hood versions that you can check out. And on Hoopla, you don't have to wait. There's no holds. You just go and you check it out right away, and you can borrow up to your limit, which right now is 20 per month. And now, so without further ado, I would like to introduce Jaimie Engle. Welcome, Jaimie.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate it so much. I'm really excited to be here virtually with all of you.
I'm going to turn off my camera, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Hi, guys. Happy summer. You know, it may not feel like it because we're all still in this type of a situation, but what a great time to write and read books, right? I'm excited to share my story with you about my Little Red Riding Hood take. Real quick about me, I've been writing since I was 7 and published my first book in 2012. I love talking to kids about writing and inspiring you guys to do what I do, because the only difference between us is I'm a little bit older. That's it. I'm not a better writer. So you guys can write your own stories, and I would love to see them. So we're talking about your picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So I'm going to show you a picture. This is a picture. It's a painting rendition of a thing called the Battle of Bosworth Field, and that really happened in history. And that picture inspired more than 1,000 words. It inspired my first book, the one I said I published in 2012. You can see there's a lot of words in there, way more than 1,000. But as a writer, we have to describe everything in the picture. We have to describe what it looks like, what the characters are feeling, what they hear, what they see, everything. And it's so important that you put all that detail into your stories, and that way your readers can connect with your message, because that's why we write and that's why we read. And I thought, why not Little Red Riding Hood, right? Why not talk about the story that discusses all the 5 senses? So if you were to think about your favorite version of Little Red Riding Hood, I'm going to read my version of Little Red Riding Hood from my book, The Toilet Papers, Junior. I know, it's a great title, thank you. So mine's called Little Red Learns. And I want you to listen for all of the trigger words about the senses, and we're going to talk about those. Deep in the woods, the story is read, there lives a small girl who is good. She listens to Mama, her color is red, and she goes by the name Riding Hood. Red walks with the squirrels, loves all the deer, and spends all day long with her mouse. One day, Mama says, "Oh, Riding Hood dear, please take this to grandmother's house." The basket is stuffed with fresh bread, a pear, and some soup for her Gram to feel better. Poor Red doesn't notice the bright yellow pear of the wolf who's just waiting to get her. Red goes on her way at a skippity pace, her little red hood on her head, and at the same moment, her grandmother pays as the wolf slips into Gram's bed. Her basket in hand and soft on her feet, Red skips to the house with delight. It is a long trip and no simple feat, arriving as dusk turns to night. Can you see that? Can you see dusk turning to night? She climbs up the steps and knocks really hard, then waits for her grandmother's voice. The voice that she hears sends chills to her heart, but late hours leave her no choice. Red opens the door, afraid what she'll meet. "Come closer, my voice is just hoarse." Old Wolf lies and tricks, entranced by the meat that soon will become his main course. "Grandmother dear, you have such big eyes." "They're swollen," the wolf plainly lies. "Why, grandmother dear, I can get you some ice." "Don't bother, I've already tried." "Why, grandmother dear, the size of your nose." "It's swollen," the wolf lies with great speed. And with a small gasp, Red Riding Hood knows on what food Old Wolf wants to feed. She looks out the window, staring at night, afraid but without time to wait. Red wishes for rescue by a white knight before served on Wolf's dinner plate. "Come closer," he says. "Come stand over here." Red Riding Hood walks to that place. She wishes to scream, but no one will hear. So she stands just an inch from his face. "Your teeth are much bigger than any I know." And Old Wolf gives a sly grin. "Is Grandma alive?" He shakes his head no. She says, "You'll pay for your sin." And with all the might of a great grizzly bear, she punches him, then runs away. She looks for a place where the forest is bare, hopes that path will lead her today. A merchant moving by on his way to the sea, sidetracked by all the commotion, he looks through the woods just trying to see the cause of Red Riding Hood's motion. He knows what to do when he sees the two, and he runs as fast as he can to kill that old wolf, save Riding Hood too, and foil the big bad wolf's plan. Red learned from Old Wolf that how people act and their words, not enough to be sure. And thanks to the merchant with razor-sharp axe, Red now owns a hood of wolf fur. The end. So let's talk about when you're writing, and then we'll go through with that and show some examples. When you think about a story, most of the time, the easiest part is to write what you see and what you hear, and maybe describe things so that the reader can understand what it feels like. But the things that most people forget to talk about are scent and taste. Those are hard ones to remember to put into your story, but they can be the most powerful. So in Red Riding Hood, we have "Grandma, what big eyes you have," right? We all know this. And when you're writing a story, you're going to share with your reader what the characters see. As a narrator, you're going to write what the setting looks like. And those things are very important because you want to describe everything clearly so that the reader understands. But like in the example of my version of Riding Hood, we talk about her color is red, right? She wears a red hood. Everybody knows that. But what color is your red hood? Is it blood red, crimson, brick red, cherry red? Does it matter? When you're describing what things look like to your reader, if it doesn't matter to the story, then you let them imagine it. it does not matter what shade of red Red Riding Hood's hood is, but it's got to be red because that's just how the story goes, right? So when you're describing things, if it's important to know what kind of tree it is or what the style of the building is, make sure you share that with your reader. If they need to know that the main character has green eyes, share it if that's important to you. But if it's not, let them imagine it. And the next time you read a story, pay attention to what details the author has given to you to see in your mind's eye versus the ones that you just fill in with your own memories and your own ideas. My grandma, what big ears you have. Well, in my upside down book, in my version, I put, she listens to mama. For the third line of the story, she listens to mama. What does mama sound like? Well, to you, you might picture what your mother sounds like when she tells you to do something, or your caretaker if you live with a grandparent. If you don't know or you didn't want to hear your mom's voice, I don't know, maybe your mom has a scratchy voice, you didn't want to hear it, whatever. Maybe you pictured a mom on one of your favorite shows that you watch. So it wasn't important that I described the tone of her voice or the texture of her voice, right? Saying mom's voice made you hear your mom's voice or a mom's voice, right? I'm a mom, maybe you heard my voice, I don't know. So in hearing, it enhances the story because we can see a bird flying overhead, but maybe we want to hear it. Maybe that'll help us to really engage and feel the story if we can hear that bird and not just see it, right? So there's your hearing. Now the next one is, but grandma, what big hands you have. That's the normal version of the Little Red Riding Hood story. So when you are reading a book, you can't feel anything except for the paper and the cover, right? But when you see the character touch a hardwood chair, you remember what that feels like. And your senses can pick up on that. And you feel like you're touching the hardwood chair. At the end of the story, I said that now Red wore a hood made of wolf fur. Well, can't you feel that? Can't you touch that texture of the fur, whether it's soft or whether it's coarse? It's up to you. What color is it? What color was this wolf? Black? Peppered? Caramel? We don't know. It doesn't matter. What color is your wolf? But you can feel that texture. So you want to make sure that when you are giving details of touch, that you're making sure to think about things that everybody might know and then tagging that to your particular story. You don't have to describe what a wood chair feels like. I guarantee 99% of your readers are going to know what a wood chair feels like. All you have to say is that it's a wood chair, and now that's going to feel different to me than a lazy boy recliner, right? That's going to be soft and leather, so it's just a different texture. So you want to give them some detail when you're writing, but you also want to make sure it's going to push that story forward. Otherwise, let your reader imagine it, okay? So now we get to the big ones, smell and taste, the ones that most writers forget to include. And you know what? These are the two that also separate books from shows. When you watch a YouTube video or you're binging something on Netflix, you cannot smell or taste anything. You can't touch it either, of course. You can just see and hear it, but you can watch that character touch that wood chair and your mind fills in what it feels like. So you do get some of that feel in that sense. But smell, did you guys know that smell is the only scent that triggers your memory? It's in the same part of your brain, scent and memory. And I know you've probably walked into a room and you've smelled chocolate chip cookies, and now you're suddenly transported back to your grandma's house, right? Or you go outside or you travel somewhere and you smell a flower, and now the next time you smell that flower, it's as if you're back in that location. It's like you teleported back to that place where you had that scent. No other sense gives you that connection. So when you can bring scent and smell into your story, you are going to not only lock your character into the moment, but you're going to have your reader connect to two things. They're going to connect back to that memory that they had from their scent. And now they're going to also connect that to your story. And they're going to love your story. They're going to want to read it again and again because you have attached now your book to their memory. That's awesome. And it's fun to play with scent. If you've ever been to Epcot, you know there's a ride there called Soarin'. And what do they do in Soarin'? They pump out orange, right? Citrus. Oh, it's delicious. And you can smell it, and it just takes you really into that ride. It's not just, you know, you're sitting there and looking around, and this is cool. And I'm sorry to bring up Epcot because we can't go. I'm so sorry. I'm sad too. We can have a moment of silence for Epcot. Okay, we're back. So make sure that you remember that moment in Soarin' when you're there and you smell the oranges, and you can almost taste the orange when you smell it, and put that in your writing because your audience will love you for it. Now, scent and taste go hand in hand, right? When I was in 5th grade, I remember clearly doing a science experiment where we had to cover our eyes and we pinched our nose, put a clothespin on our nose, and we had to taste a piece of cut apple and a piece of cut potato. And you cannot tell the difference because your scent and your taste are so closely related that they do help each other. So when you're describing that scent, you can also know that you're going to have to describe those tastes too. And I did that a little bit in this story with the fresh bread, right? You can almost smell bread. When you hear the word fresh bread, I don't know about you, but I'm in Panera. I'm in Panera and I hear them go hot bread and I get so excited. And that is what you're trying to accomplish with your reader. You are trying to take your reader into your story to experience it. Because we read for 3 reasons and we write for 3 reasons, really. We want to be educated, we want to be entertained, or we want an escape. So if you can combine all 3 of those, that's great. 1 or 2, that's fine. But when you take your reader into the story and they are being entertained by this story that you've written, you have to do that with all the senses because then they'll sit longer in your story. You think of your favorite books. For me, it's always going to be Hunger Games. It's one of my favorite stories, and Harry Potter. Those are my 2 favorite stories forever. In both of those stories, you have all 5 senses all the time. You know, you're always hearing, you're always seeing, and you're always touching. But they both do an amazing job of giving you that scent and that taste. And if you've ever been to Universal, and I'm sorry to do it again, I know they're open a little bit more, you've gotten to taste butterbeer. How cool is that? And that was because it was in the story and you were so involved in it that you wanted it, right? You wanted your own butterbeer. And it's so important to remember when you're writing your stories to go back in and see places where you can trigger the reader to connect with scent and with taste. And I promise you're going to be really happy, and so is your reader. So I really hope that this has given you a couple of things to think about when it comes to your own writing. What I recommend when you're writing your story is that you start and just go through the whole story. I wouldn't stop for anything. You know, you want to get it all out because what you envision in your mind as a writer, you write it down on paper or you type it, and then you give that time capsule to your reader. And the reader should open up your story and be inside your imagination. And that is really your job as a writer. That's what I do. I imagine and then I share it with you, and I hope that you see what I saw and you hear what I hear and you taste and smell what I taste and smell. And so when you're writing your book or you're writing your short story or you're writing your poem, what you want to do is write it all in one quick draft. Just get it out on paper and then go back to the beginning and find places where you have mention of these senses and see where can you add more. Where can you take a girl walking through the woods and describe what it smells like? Did it just rain? Does it have that ozone smell? Is the soil wet? Do you have that earthen scent? what flowers or plants are blooming that you can bring into the story. Think about those things when you're writing your second draft, and go in and add those in, and make sure that you're constantly bringing your reader into the story, into the experience that you're building for them. Because that's why we read. You know, we read a book, and I don't know about you, but sometimes I close it and I just take a deep breath because I feel inspired to be better. You know, I finished reading Katniss's story, and I kind of feel like we're all going through Katniss's story right now. But I finished reading her story, and I feel like if Katniss could do it, I can do it. And if she can stand up for herself and for other people and fight against bad people that are trying to take away her voice and the people's voice, I can do that. And that is not because I was told a story. It was because I experienced a story by how the writer crafted the five senses into it. I really hope this has been helpful for you. I would love to look at some of your questions. What I have for you guys, actually, I have a website link that will be shared, and you can go to it, and I have a bunch of free stuff you can download. This is my world. It's called the Thalia, and this is from one of my books called Dreadlands, which is Vikings and Norse mythology and wolf shifters. So you can check the book out. You can check out the map and just download it and color it or whatever you want. There's also on that site, I have coloring pages for Clifton Chase. This is just one of them. And I also have some crossword puzzles and word searches for Clifton Chase that you guys can download and do. I know you're sitting at home and you're like, I'm so bored. So I got some free stuff for you while you're writing your own stories, because I'd love to see them. And then there's a place where you can click and become an Engle dork and come to the land of Ingledor. This is what I call all of my worlds, because I want you to get your passport and I want you to jump in and be part of all the worlds that I build, because it's so much fun to play make believe. So this passport, you get to personalize. You can download this right from my site. And then when you read a book like The Toilet Papers, you can reach out to me, I'll send it to you. Or if I see you in person, you can grab a sticker and you put that sticker right there to show that you've been to that world. And then you get to draw your own idea of what that world is like. And you can share that with me. I am on all social media. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Snapchat, I'm on Instagram, everywhere. And you can send pictures to me and I would love to see them. But this is your passport to escape this world. This world is a little crazy right now. And the beauty of being a writer is you get to make the world right. When the world is wrong and it feels overwhelming and you feel out of control, the writer gets to fix all of that and make everything perfect again. So I really encourage you, if you've never written before, to try it, especially during this time when everything's so uncertain, because you can take that uncertainty and you can really look at it and you can give it an answer and you can make it right just on the page. So thank you so much. I'm so excited to meet you guys and hear what you think and what questions you might have. And Matthew, I'm so grateful for being here today.
Well, thank you very much, Jaimie. The feeling is absolutely mutual, and that was a wonderful talk, and we're very much excited about that, and we about the idea of reading and writing as a way of answering the world's problems. So that's fantastic. So this is a little screen here how you can get in contact with us at the library by giving us a call or going to our contact link. You actually can chat with a librarian through our Ask a Librarian service. And like I said, hcplc.org/summer, that's the site I mentioned earlier, to not only will you hopefully be working on your writing, but hopefully you're working on your reading. And that's a big part of this whole thing as well. And you'll maybe, if you get a copy of Jaimie's book, you can put that in your log, your reading log, in order to earn those digital badges and be eligible for prizes. And as mentioned before, Jaimie's website and her handle on social media. Now, we do have a couple of questions coming in. Again, you can post them in your in the questions section of the GoToWebinar control panel. And let me just go ahead and pull that up. Oh, this is a good question. What color is your red hood, Jaimie?
Oh, that's a great question. Mine is that really rich, almost like the Christmas red, like that velvety Christmas red. That's what I always picture when I think of Little Red Riding Hood. That's a great question.
That is good. Yeah, I don't think I would have a response for that. I think I'd have to figure it out. Oh, and here's another one. You've given some great encouragement for how to kind of get started on writing, but as I think probably happens with a lot of writers, whether they're at the beginning or well into their writing endeavors, writer's block. And so, how do you grapple with the writer's block, where you just can't come up with anything?
It's a great question, and it does. All of us writers get that all the time. For me, what I find is when I hit writer's block, it's only because I haven't thought about what happens next in the story. And it's not really that I have writer's block, I just haven't fully developed where I'm going. So I handle it one of two ways. I either stop, set the book aside, go walk my dog, go work out, go binge Stranger Things, and get inspired by something and then come back to the story, give myself time to just like subconsciously think about what might happen. Or I continue writing to my next scene that I know. And then when I'm finished, I can go back in and fill that blank space because something that happens later in the story might give me the answer I was looking for. I don't know if you know this, but when people write mysteries, they know who the killer is before they start at the beginning. Because if they don't, they won't know where to go with the story. So sometimes you need that end to fill in everything that comes before it.
That's a really good point actually, and I think I've heard that elsewhere. It might be a Seven Habits thing where you begin with the end in mind. So it's
Yes.
not just for writing. It's a good thing to think about in a lot of scenarios.
Agreed.
We have another question that came in, which is what book or what books have inspired you to be an author or continue being an author?
Oh, my favorite book. When I was a little girl, I read Alice in Wonderland. And at one point, I was in the story. And I remember realizing my imagination was so strong that I was in the book and I gasped and I was back in my bed. And I thought that was the most awesome feeling ever. And I wanted to do that for other people. So that was when I was really little. And I started reading and writing really bad, like Shel Silverstein copycat poetry and short stories that I still have. And some of them actually are photocopied in the Toilet Papers Junior. So you get to see those when I was in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. But what I did was a lot of reading because it kind of trains your ear. You know, when you read a story that's well written, you kind of get a feeling for the pacing of the sentence structure and short sentences to long sentences, opening with a clause to opening with a subject. And the more you read, the more your mind just absorbs all of that. And you start writing better because you read more. So I know Stephen King is probably way out of y'all's league right now, but he said you should read 50 books a year in your genre that you want to write. It's a lot of books, especially when his books are like 1,000 pages. But that was what inspired me. And I took that story and just read it a lot. So that's my big one. As an adult, um, I love fantasy adventures, like magical realism fantasy adventures. So, like right now I'm reading Scythe. I'm on book 2 and it's just phenomenal. And I just really get enraptured in the idea of worlds within our worlds, like Stranger Things, or anything that takes me out of this world. I don't want to read about reality. I'm an adult, like I live it. I don't want to read about that stuff. So I like to read books that I'm escapism. That's my reading goal. That's a good question too. You guys are awesome.
That is good. And I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen just for a moment, just so we can see a little bit better here. And yeah, no, I think that's a good point, especially it's okay that it's bad, like when you start writing, there's going to be a learning curve like with everything, and there'll be some great stuff early on with when you trust your instincts, and then there'll be some terrible stuff you have to throw in the garbage and start over, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my first book is still sitting in this computer that I'm talking to you guys on. I wrote it when I was 20, and it is still in that computer. It has never seen the light of day. It's not that it's bad, it's just cliche. I just took pieces from everyone else's stuff and wrote a story because I didn't have my own voice yet. So that's really what you learn by writing and reading is how to find your voice.
Oh, that's excellent. Oh, we have another question just came in. When and how do you come up with the book title? So I guess when in the process do you come up with it, and how do you figure out what it's going to be?
I am the master of awful book titles. So for my first book, I did a poll in my son's fifth grade class and asked them what it should be because an agent said it was the most awful title ever. So that happened. The Dreadlands book that I shared with you guys, the map you can download, originally it was called Night Stalker, which I thought was awesome. And my husband's like, that's bait fish, right? So sorry. So I'm a terrible title maker. I like to ask other people to help me. So anyway, the answer to when I come up with these bad titles is usually either before I start writing or like towards the climax, towards the end of it. Because by then I feel like I have a really good grasp on what the main point of that story is, and I can kind of feel what I want the title to be. I came up with the toilet paper, so I did good on that one.
That is a good one for sure. Um, okay, we have another question that came in. Do you like comic books?
I really, really want to like comic books. I do read some. It's very difficult for me because I write so many words. It's hard for me to like just get a line and be okay with it. So I have read some and I do enjoy them, but I have to change my mindset to get into it. I'm currently writing my first one. It's an adult one, so you guys won't see it until you're probably in high school. But it's been very interesting. And when you're writing a comic, what you're actually writing is a screenplay, like a film screenplay. So it's a very different type of writing. You're not having to build the world because that's what the artist does. You're just having to really do the dialogue and then tell the artist what you want to see happen next. So it's just a completely different style of writing, and I'm very interested in learning it better as a reader and as a writer. Another great question. Wow.
That is
Never been
good.
asked that one.
And I think it's interesting because sometimes you don't come to things naturally and you kind of push yourself to get invested in them, and then all of a sudden they pay off in certain ways. But I think it is a good question, and I think I can speak for a lot of librarians, including myself, when I say reading is reading. And if you are into comic books, go for it. Definitely go for it, and really make that your passion and let that be your reading. And if you're wondering about that counting for your Beanstack minutes when you log them for the summer reading, for sure it does. Any kind of reading does. If you're reading magazines or comic books or articles or blogs or whatever it is, that time all counts. We know that there's such magic and wonder and discovery in books, but that definitely exists in the many corners of the earth, including comic books. And I think we mentioned Hoopla earlier in our book shout out. Hoopla is a great place for graphic novels if you're old enough, or comic books. I can say one thing. My daughter, who is 8 years old, is super into comic books, and she is really enjoying the Lumberjanes series. That's a great sort of all ages comic book, and that is available through Hoopla. So if you're looking for something, that would be a good one to
Check
dive
it
in.
out.
That's right. Okay. One other question we have here is, How old were you when you started writing and when you wrote your first story? I think you said your first book was at age 20. Is that what you said?
My first manuscript, yeah, the first full book that I wrote from start to finish, that was a normal sized book, not a short story, was when I was 20. I finished that. But my first writing experience, I really started writing short stories about dreams I had, because I don't know why I had really a lot of crazy dreams when I was a kid. So I started writing those out, and then I would take people I knew, like Mary Poppins and Jane and Michael, and I would take them on adventures because I knew the characters well. So I was able to just not have to think about building the character, and I could just focus on the world building and the setting. So I did a lot of stories like that. And then Shel Silverstein, I tried to copy him. So I was learning how to really refine my word choice, because you only have a certain number of words in a poem. And then I watched the same movies over and over again. My favorites were like Back to the Future was my favorite. And I watched it probably more times than the producers did. And so that kind of taught me the whole story structure without even realizing it. And then I wrote the words down, every single word in the whole movie of The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland. So I wrote every single dialogue. So that was teaching me how to really hone in on what a conversation really sounds like versus when you write on paper. You know, a lot of times when you're a young writer and you're learning, your conversation and your writing looks like, hello, George. Hello, Steve. How are you, George? I'm great, Steve. How are you? But in real life, two things happen when you talk. You wait for your turn to speak and you're not really listening. And two conversations almost happen at the same time, because you ask a question, this person talks about something else, you talk about that, they talk about that, and then you go back to your question again, or they just answer it randomly, right? I mean, pay attention to the conversations you have with people, and you'll start picking up on how that back and forth, like tennis match, almost works. So really young, 7, 8 years old, I started writing short stories and poems. And then in high school, I had a teacher tell me that I should pursue writing as a job, because he thought I was talented. In 5th grade, I wrote a short story that my teacher wrote at the top, you should save this to publish. And that was the first time that I heard I could publish something. I thought you had to be like born into it, like royalty or a movie star. I didn't know anyone could just publish. And then in college is when I wrote my first book, that's still in this computer right here. But I published Clifton Chase in 2012. So that was my first physical book that I could share with another human being. And I hope that answers your question.
I think so. We have time, I think, for about 2 more questions, and we do have a couple of more here. One is, where is your favorite place to write?
My favorite place to write. I like anywhere that's chaotic, because if I have a lot of stuff going on around me, then I can drown out everything. When I'm sitting at my house, at my desk, and it's quiet, I just start thinking about, oh, what am I having for dinner? And maybe I should throw a load of laundry in while I'm sitting here. So it really leaves a lot of room for me to do that. So I like going to like a Panera or a Starbucks, because there's a lot of commotion. I like going to the library, because even though it's quiet, there's still a lot of movement. There's still a lot of things happening. And honestly, anywhere that I can just sit and write. I write in my car. I'm a mom of 2 kids. I have a full-time job. I'm married. So I write any second I can find. A lot of times I try to do that in the morning before I get started with my day for at least an hour, because that's when the world is the most unbothersome to me. But yeah, it's really, I write wherever I can, but to answer it in one line, anywhere that there's chaos, I will be writing. And I love listening to music. If anyone else listens to music when they write, I listen to composers. So Tim Burton movies, anything you hear on those, Star Wars movies, anything you hear on those, the Batman movies and all the Marvel films, that style of music, I have all of those composers in my Pandora, and I just play that while I write to kind of feel like, oh my gosh, I'm watching the movie of the book as I write it, and there's the background music, and it just makes me feel really engaged in the movement of the story.
I'm now trying to get the Batman theme out of my head, so that's a real earworm. We have just one last question that we have time for, but I'm gonna quickly, before we do that, I'm gonna share this screen one more time for contact information. Let everybody know that not only are these ways that you can get in contact with us and with Jaimie, but also that Jaimie will be returning to us on July 22nd in the evening at 6:30 p.m. for another program. So be sure to check out our calendar for that. Right after this session is over, there will be a very brief survey. Please take a couple of minutes to fill that out so that we can hear how much you enjoyed the session today and help us plan for future events. We want to know what you're interested in and what you're passionate about so that we can try to plan those for you. And then the final question that we have for today, I think you touched on it a little bit, but I think it's a great thing to revisit, Jaimie, because we think reading is just so important, and the more you make an effort to do it, the more rewarded you'll be. Not only the the digital badges and possible prizes you might win as part of our campaign this summer, but just the emotional reward and the time award of not being like totally bored and figuring out what to do, or having the mental strength to deal with certain kinds of things. That brain is a muscle too, so you got to work it out. So this last question is about reading, and it's, what is your favorite genre?
My favorite genre is it's called speculative fiction. So that encompasses fantasy, science fiction, and horror. Those are my three favorites. I do read other things, but if I had to pick, it's going to usually fall into that range.
So thank you very much, Jaimie, for attending, and thank you all of you for attending our session. And we will see you at the next event. So have a great day.
Guys, happy summer.
Happy summer.